Welcome. I'm Bobby Brill, product manager with Einstein Analytics and Einstein Discovery, and I'm here to show you how to take those amazing predictions and that predictive model that you get from Einstein Discovery and add it to any Salesforce app. We're going to get into what that looks like. And I'm super excited to have with me today my colleague, developer Brad, who's going to actually walk you through the actual development process to get the data onto the apps. Clicker. All right, why don't you advance? All right, who knows the forward-looking statement? I have a developer here that is in the next release already. The Salesforce development cycle, as you know, we are 3 releases per year. We've already ended our winter release development, so he is already in spring. So if he mentions anything that is not actually in the GA version, this slide covers us. So, Einstein Discovery, how many in the room have used Einstein Discovery? Awesome. Did you guys know it's on Trailhead? You can all try it out on Trailhead. It's free. Get a free instance, try out Einstein Discovery. What Einstein Discovery does is it takes your data and it tells you a story about what happened, why it happened, and it gives you some predictions and recommendations. So it builds a model behind the scenes, and you can deploy that model back to Salesforce. So the predictions and recommendations are based on a linear regression model that looks at your data and figures out, what is the correlation between certain inputs and outputs to your data. So there's a deploy button. It's great. Everything's all point and click till you get the deploy button. And there is just a few steps to get that data onto the record. Now, what you're doing today to get that data into the record is how it's going to work today. And as Salesforce continues to innovate, this will all eventually be a single click. But until it is a single click, the data itself is super important to get to your end user, so do not wait for that. Use the tools that we're going to show you to get that on there today. So there is a managed package available on the App Exchange. We're going to show you what that looks like. Within that managed package, you install that in your org, and it is then up to you to create a trigger to connect to that managed package. All of the sample code is in help and training. Use those triggers to call the scoring API and get the scores back on your record. Simple, right? So let's show you how that works. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to an actual developer to show you how to do it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bobby. Who's ready to see a demo? It's great to see the slides, but demo is helpful. Also, as you said, my name is Brad. I work on Einstein Discovery, and I'll try to make this as quickly as possible so that I can get my lunch. Awesome. So how many of you guys have seen this Analytic Studio page? Awesome. Right. So the thing is, the first step of deploying a model is creating a story for you to deploy the model in the first place. So in this case, I'll walk you through a simple use case of customer churn. Most of you guys are interested in trying to find out if the customer is attrited or not. So let's just go over that. So I have a data set which I already brought in from Salesforce called customers. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and say create story. It's as simple as that. So Einstein Discovery is currently embedded into Analytic Studio, so where you can use your data sets to create a story from it. And the create story step is so simple that the hardest thing to do is to select the name of the story in the first place. So in this case, we have few options here. I want to maximize, so the options here are I want to maximize or minimize. So in this case, you are trying to either maximize or minimize a numeric value or a binary field. So in this case, I want to minimize the churn as true. So what this basically is, like the drop down here will list all the numeric and the binary fields in the given data set. So I'm just going to say churn is true. Story name, customers, that's fine. I'll go into data options. So the data options here essentially will list all the fields which are present in the data set. So what you're trying to do here is trying to ignore all the fields which have unique value. So your ID fields should not be part of your story because they don't add any value to statistical analysis. So I'm just going to say it's already selected correctly. And just confirm your settings. So you're looking at your customers. Your story name is customers. You're minimizing your churn, and you create your story. So in this case, Einstein is in the lab crunching numbers. So with respect to time, I'll go ahead and click on the story which is already created. So as you can see, a story essentially is looking at your data, slicing and dicing your data, and essentially giving you valid insights where you can look at it and make sense out of it. So the best thing to look at it is that you have your what happened, which is essentially giving you detailed analysis of your current data, your statistical analysis of your covariance, correlation between two different fields, and how it affects your selected outcome field, in this case, customer churn. So you can see contract explains 12.7% of the variation in the churn through, and then you have other cards which has more information off of it. So essentially a card is basically a chart which gives you an explanation of your significant and insignificant values, as well as a narrative so that you can easily understand what's happening there. So what happened is cool. Why it happened is even better, where you can understand why certain values are the way they are. So for example, contract is month to month by itself, explains 2.434 of the change in the churn. So you can look at the negative impacting factors, and also you can look at the positive impacting factors here. So we try to explain the data as to the best of our ability as possible. And then also you have your predictions and improvements. This particular page will allow you to input values of the different fields which you selected in your data set and get predictions off of it. So in this case, I'll go ahead and select senior citizen 1, tenure is 30 to 37, payment method is automatic, etc. So you can select all the fields and you get actual predictions. So if you hover over here, you'll get the prediction saying, hey, churn equals true is 14%. So you have the ability to look at the predictions and the improvements of the given selected fields. So now, let's go ahead and let's assume that you love your story. Everything is perfect. All the data set is, you're happy with your story you created. So the next thing you do is you deploy it to Salesforce. So when you click on deploy to Salesforce, you get this awesome UI where you can select a few things. So in this case, for some reason this thing is not new. So you deploy the new prediction and recommendation model and how to name your model. So in this case, I'm going to say how to minimize churn. 2. You add the object. So essentially what this is saying is that which object do I relate this entire story to? Where do I deploy this to? We already selected customer _ C because that has all the fields which are a part of your data set. But you have the option to select different objects as well. You add the filters, and essentially segmentation is saying that, hey, I don't want this model to be run against certain segment of fields. So you have the ability to add filters where you can say equals, greater than, the field is greater than certain value. So you can add segmentation to your model. You can add actionable variables, which is essentially saying that you are looking into certain specific fields for your marketing campaigns and whatnot. So these are some actionable fields which you can add through this UI. And then you deploy the model to Salesforce. And the deployment to model to Salesforce, you just look at your settings and see if everything is cool and go ahead and deploy. Voila. There you go. So your recommendation is deployed to Salesforce. Ideally, this should be your final screen which you see. This is going to be a forward-looking statement, Bobby, but hopefully we'll get to that stage pretty soon. But how do you see the recommendations in each and every record of customers? That's the question, right? That's the big question. So that particular process can be broken down into 4 steps. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4. The steps are available to you, easily available to you in the help and training section where you have your information. As you can see, you can have your deployed model to Salesforce, your installation of your managed package, creation of custom fields, creation of your custom settings, and create an Apex trigger to essentially write back to each and every record. So as I said, 4 steps. Deploy your install the managed package, create the custom fields on the record, create the custom settings, and essentially create or install an Apex trigger. So let's go ahead and do that. currently, this is the managed package is currently available in App Exchange for you guys to install it. This is the available thing. The security sign-off is done. It's available right now, so you can actually install it on your applications. So step 1 is complete. Step 2, we need to add custom fields to your object. In this case, what we're trying to do is we're saying, hey, we've deployed to customer__C, which is a custom object. And what we're trying to do is we're adding a few fields so that we can navigate the Apex managed package to write back the predictions to the record. So as time is a concern, what we did was we already created custom fields here. So the custom fields here are discovery outcome, discovery prescription, and those are the 2 fields, and discovery explanations. So these are the fields which we added to the custom object of consumer or customer. So we have, we have completed step 2. So let's go ahead and do step 3 of custom settings. Here we are. So custom settings, we'll go ahead and click manage. And in this case, I'm doing predicted churn. So I'll go ahead and edit it. This is what you usually see with respect to the custom settings. So the things which you need to take into consideration is name, which is a required field. So you need to name your custom settings so that you can navigate, or you can navigate your Apex trigger to this particular custom settings to learn more about it. So you have your commentary field name, which we just saw, which we just created, discovery explanation, custom object or object customer. We have your outcome field name, basically the discovery outcome, and your prediction definition ID. What is prediction definition ID? This is the most important thing which you need to consider. And what I mean by that is we have deployed the Salesforce or deployed the story into Salesforce. How do we tell the Apex trigger which we are going to create to look at the prediction definition or the model which we just deployed? So for that, we have to go to Analytic Studio and click on Model Manager. And in this case, we have deployed the model saying how to minimize churn 2, right? And the prediction definition ID is essentially this prediction ID right here. So you copy this prediction ID right here and go back to custom settings and change that up. So that essentially takes the prediction definition ID and navigates, or basically tells the Apex trigger to look at this particular prediction ID to get your predictions. Awesome. So let's go ahead and save it. Now, let's see the Apex triggers. So if you go into the help and training section, we have 3 different options of creating an Apex trigger. So the first option is to create an Apex trigger by the field itself, by a single object. So in this case, we just have the single object where there's no data transformation required. So what we do is we look at every single record for the given record, every single field of the given record, and we try to give a prediction out of it. The second option is having multiple fields, multiple objects with no data transformation. All this is saying is that you write a custom query, a SQL query in this case, so you have 2 different record information, and you try to predict on that. And then the third one is with data transformation. This is a bit convoluted, where you're trying to add a few fields and try to make data transformation on top of it. So, as I said, the help and training section provides you all the sample code for you to execute this stuff. So let's go ahead and look into the Apex triggers. So this is the current Apex trigger which we have. So as you can see, we have the first option which I created. So let's go ahead and edit it. So all you're trying to do is we're saying set churn prediction on customer__C. So an Apex trigger, I'm pretty sure most of you are all aware of it, is basically an operation which happens after an insert, update, or delete of a record for consumer. So in this case, the only thing which you need to change is the config name. And the config name is the one which we created in the custom settings. So if you go back to custom settings, we have the predict churn name which we created. All you have to do in the Apex trigger is to define the config name right here. Right now, as I showed you, there are 2 options. You can have the option 2, where you have your custom query, where you say, hey, select field 1, field 2, field 3, example code, from opportunity in this case, where ID equals so-and-so. So you have that opportunity. In this case, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to say save. All right, let's just go back to, let's just go back to our customer object. So this is our customer, this is our customer page. We created this particular thing just for your, ease of use, and we have the information available here. As I said, we have the information available there with your discovery outcome, the discovery explanation, and the discovery prescription, which is the custom fields which you created. Now, so let's go ahead and change something. So let's go ahead and change senior citizen, or I'm going to change this to 2. No. Voila. You see, as soon as you change or you update your record, you have it triggers, or the Apex trigger makes a call to the manage package, which is essentially a wrapper for Predict API, which we currently have under development. And it essentially populates the fields which we define. So in this case, the discovery outcome is available as 19, and you have detailed explanation of what happened and how you can improve it, which is very essential. So by doing so, you can have a report on it where you can check all your predictions and prescription numbers, and you can accordingly have analysis on top of it. So that's how you get your predictions from Einstein Discovery story into your record. So let's go into this where this is one way of doing it. The second way of doing it, or it's more of an easier way of doing things, is that we can, so with respect to this particular managed package, we also have a Lightning component. We linked a Lightning component, which is an open source product on GitHub, where you can use this particular thing. So let's go ahead and see what happens when you do that. So this is the Lightning app builder page, where in Lightning where you can add Lightning components on top of it. So we have a custom component right here. So we just take this custom component. This custom component is available to general use, and it's an open source one. So you can go ahead and check it out in the App Exchange. It's linked right on top of the write-back managed package. So when we do this and we select save, that essentially changes the page activation. So let's go ahead and set this as or default, and
don't forget the prediction definition ID on there. There's
yes.
Settings. You can customize the way it looks and the way it's delivered to your end users.
Thank you, Bobby. So I'm just going to say this and say Einstein Discovery. We save it. And then let's refresh this page. There you go. So that's how you essentially get prediction on every single record of any objects with Einstein Discovery, powered by the regression models we built on the story. That's it.
Awesome. So one thing I want to mention, if you have seen Einstein Discovery in the past, it may have looked a little bit different when you just saw it here. That is the new Winter 19 version of Einstein Discovery. Brand new customers will see that experience by default within Analytic Studio. Existing customers on AWS will continue using the AWS version of Einstein Discovery. So there is a bit of a transition period. We're trying to move everything onto Analytic Studio so that you can do these things from the data sets. However, everything you just saw is available through the older version of Einstein Discovery through AWS. Simply click that deploy button from the Einstein Discovery on AWS. You'll get your model. You follow the exact same steps to get your predictions on the records. Just want to clarify that. Does anyone have any questions on what they saw? Yes. You want to go into that? From
What's
the
that?
The lightning component that you did at the very end.
Yeah.
Can we change, like, it says, like, TV mode, but there's no spaces. Can you change that and make it prettier?
Yeah.
With, like, maybe the apex structure?
Right, so it is that component is entirely open source. You can make whatever changes you want. So this was just, there's some light customizations you can do, like changing the text, changing the...
If I wanted to change this internet service, this fiber optic, all of that, if I wanted to make a sentence or something, where would I make the change?
Right. So the question is, how do we customize what the text that's coming out there? How do we customize that? So what's happening behind the scenes is we are doing a query against the prediction API. And the prediction API is actually returning the text that looks exactly like this. So if you are, if you're a developer and you know how to deal with Lightning components, you can look in the code where we actually make the call to the prediction API, and we'll return that text. Then you can get that text before we write it to the component, make whatever changes you want. For example, we have a way to bold just the field name, or we have a way to bold just the value. So you can do whatever you want before it's there.